Hello everyone, this is Frogman and welcome back to Manufactio. Today we're in the test world messing around with minecarts, fluid loading, unloading tanks, and a little bit of redstone. So the idea here is that I want to be able to move a large amount of fluid from one point to another without having to run tons and tons of pipe. Now it is doable, you can run pipe wherever you want to go, but when you're talking about 300 or 400 blocks or more away from wherever you're actually trying to process your fluids, it makes more sense to try to carry it in a fairly large quantity, especially the fact that we can carry 27 stacks of something or 27 of something inside one of those mine carts. So, with that thought in mind, I want to show you how I am using the metal barrels to transfer materials from one point to another. So, let's get into it. Yes, the basic idea here is that I want to be able to carry, say, oil products from one side of my base to the other side of my base without running a bunch of pipe. So we have a couple of very handy blocks. I should say we have three very handy blocks here. The first one is the immersive metal barrel, or for that matter, you can use the other barrel, I think the treated wood barrel. This holds 12 buckets. This has the wonderful function that it automatically will intake a fluid into the top, and if I can get this like this, it has an output on the bottom, and this output is an auto output, meaning it will immediately start outputting onto another tank or a pipe or one of those tanks or anything like that. So as soon as I place it down, it's going to start dumping things. So that means I don't need servos, I don't need pumps, I don't need any of that stuff. So it's really, really handy little thing. Yes, you can use the fluid tanks for mechanism. The problem with the mechanism tank, however, is if it's empty, and we'll put this guy in here, I can then place it. Actually, it's not even working now, but it was working earlier. That's why I've got a full one here. But you can't place the block. You can't place the block. You can't pick up the block. If it's full or empty or anything like this, it may work once in a while. It may not. Like I tried one earlier and filled it and it worked. And then I tried to break it. It wouldn't break. And then I tried to place it. It wouldn't place. But either way, we're not going to be concentrating on the mechanism stuff. We're going to be using the immersive engineering barrels. Now, I'm going to be using an open blocks block placer and an open block breaker to do the placing and the breaking of the block, because this thing will place a block in front of it, and then this will break said block, and place it into an inventory. So yeah, I have no idea how that worked. Still don't know how that worked. So we'll just put it over here. Anyhow, that's the basis of the idea. So we're going to place a barrel, either fill the barrel or empty the barrel, sense when the barrel is empty or full, and then once that happens, break the barrel, place another one, and then just continue the cycle until we're out of barrels. So pretty simple, pretty easy. That part is, at least to grasp the concept. So what I have here is I've got three control circuits, and I have the system separated so we can easily see what's going on between the three. So let's start with the loading circuit. The loading circuit requires a little bit more redstone logic than the unloading circuit does, but it's not terribly hard to understand or grasp how things work with this. So what we're going to say is that we have a minecart rail line coming in here, and the minecart is coming in full of empty barrels. So I've got a bunch of empty barrels in here. The minecart will come across this cart hopper, which this cart hopper is set to emit a redstone signal once the cart is empty. When it dumps all of the barrels out of the minecart into, and I notice I have it placed directly on top of the block breaker placer for a reason. When this senses the cart is empty, it's going to emit a redstone signal, which will send the cart on its way and will also start the cycle of how to fill the barrels. So as soon as it does that, that block placer is going to place the first metal barrel. The system will then start filling the metal barrel from this tank over here, and then we will be measuring the contents of the barrel with this circuit. So the first part of the circuit is a comparator. Pretty simple. We're just trying to read the inventory and get a number out of that inventory, whether it is full or empty or half full or however you want to work on it. This comparator here, right, is facing, or I should say, reading this bin, and this bin has 60 items in it. 60 items in a bin with a comparator here will output a signal of 14. So one less than a full barrel would. What that's doing is it's firing, or should say sending its signal into a comparator set into subtract mode. What I'm going to do here is I want to subtract the signal coming out of that comparator from this one, or should say the signal coming out of this comparator from that one. So when that signal right here becomes 15, that will be 15 minus 14, which is 1, which will then fire this pulse former off into the system and make the cycle continue. A pulse former is just a single block option that will emit a single redstone pulse, a 1-tick pulse out of the system and not carry it any longer. So basically what I want is whenever this flips over to a 1, I want this to fire a 1-tick pulse into the rest of the system. Because if I have this signal on for a good period of time, or longer than this signal is, the block breaker will continue to stay on while this is trying to place blocks. You can fiddle around with that and make it so that you have a lot more time, but basically we want the initial input redstone signal to be as short as possible so that this thing is not trying to place blocks when this is trying to break blocks. So the rest of the circuit is fairly simple. I have two repeaters here firing the block breaker. I have 3 repeaters firing the block placer. They're all set to the full tick delay, and that is just so that I have enough time to clear the redstone signal out of that breaker before this thing tries to fire and place a barrel. I have 3 here and 2 here just so that I have a little bit of extra time because of how the world works and server lag and whatnot, that we just want to make sure we have plenty of time. So let us fire this off. This redstone signal here is here for a reason, and we'll see why here in just a little bit, or this redstone dust. But we'll just go ahead and fire the circuit. It'll place a barrel. We will begin filling the barrel. It breaks the barrel, places the new barrel. So we can kind of watch this work. The barrel gets full. Circuit fires, and we watch this signal come up. As soon as it hits 15, we signal the system to go to work, and it just cycles until we either run out of barrels or we run out of this, which I can simulate by doing that. Now, it's going to sit there and wait because I have plenty of barrels. We're just simulating not having any fluid at this point. So if I pick this up and put it back, it will start filling up again and it will go. It's neat because it won't just sit there and continuously break barrels, and we won't have barrels half empty or half full. So it waits until they're completely full. All right, so that is the loading circuit, and of course basically what happens, the breaker is placing things into this hopper, and the hopper then deposits it into this minecart ready to go wherever it needs to go. So the unloading circuit, the majority of this is similar, other than we are not measuring for a full content of a barrel, we are measuring for an empty content. So all I want is as soon as this turns to a 0 as it is now, that is going to allow a NOT gate to flip-flop like it is right now. It's currently set in output mode, but because this is a pulse former, it can't do anything. That will then fire into a pulse former that again does the exact same thing. A NOT gate basically is a redstone block that takes the input signal and inverts it. So right now it's off. It's saying I don't have a signal on this side, so I'm going to emit a full signal on this side. When I place the barrel, the full barrel, this comparator is going to read the fact that that barrel is full and emit a redstone signal. As soon as that redstone signal hits 0, it's going to allow the system to work. So let's go grab these guys and place this in here. And then the same thing goes here. The hopper is sitting on top of the block placer to start the cycle. So click the button. He'll place a barrel, and as we watch, the signal will slowly creep down. The unloading is a little slower just because of the fact that I'm unloading on the speed at which this barrel unloads. But once we hit 0, you're going to see it fire and go, and it'll just continuously cycle that. Now we can make this slightly faster if you use servos and fluid ducts on the bottom of this, but that negates the auto output function of this. Either way, it's pretty quick. Again, pretty simple, pretty easy. Goes very simple. I mean, it's a fairly large circuit, which is the only problem. It's fairly long, and it can be kind of hard to hide underneath the floor, so, or wherever you plan on putting it. But we'll let that guy run a little bit. The last circuit is the cart control circuit. And this one is the one that takes a little bit of finesse and finagling to make work because of how your tracks need to be laid out. So we're going to simulate that this hopper is the output hopper here on the back of the block breaker. Now I have these guys set this direction just to make it easier to run redstone. You can set those things in any direction that you need to. I think even down would be okay as well. So down or up or facing however direction. That's the hopper here. So what we're going to do is we're going to simulate a minecart coming into the station. It's going to drop off its stuff and then it's going to go around into a loading area. Now the loading area, I have a minecart powered rail sitting here with a lever on it. You can redstone control this if you want. You can just feed a signal off of the circuit. This is simpler, so not too much of a problem here. The circuit is such that I detect when a minecart comes into the station with a detector rail and when the minecart leaves the station with, again, a detector rail. That circuit, or should say this line, comes around over to a toggle latch. And what a toggle latch does is when you give it a redstone signal, it just flips its output from one side to another. So now it's off, button, now it's on. So that's the whole reason why we have a toggle latch. So what I want to do is I want to lock off a timer that is allowing this system that basically controls when the cart leaves the station. So cart came in, and we're just going to walk through this real quick. The cart comes in and then is sitting right here. When it comes over the system, there is a redstone signal that is sent from this line right here, which is then controlling this timer. So as I break and replace blocks, this timer will continuously be reset until there is nothing left to break or replace, and then the timer will be allowed to run. The two detector rails are going to toggle this toggle latch on and off to do the exact same thing, so that I'm not sitting here with a piston going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, regardless of whether there's a cart here or not. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to grab that cart and I'm going to send him through into the station. So if I do that and I shut this off, he has now dropped off his stuff. We should see now that the toggle latch is facing this way and the timer is moving. Now I'm saying I have barrels in here that are currently running. So as I empty a barrel, or as that comparative signal goes up and down, I'm going to toggle that clock back and forth until there's nothing left to measure. Then the clock will be allowed to run, which it will take, I forget, what is it, 10 seconds? It will then fire into this Project Red repeater, which is then going to allow the cart to leave. Notice how the system is off. Notice how it's not running. It's because this toggle latch toggled back over to its output side towards the clock, and it is now locked out, so we don't have anything running here. What happens is the timer then fires into this Project Red repeater that I have set to 6 ticks, because you can get 6 ticks out of one of these. That is then sent up into a NOT gate that is facing into this piston, or sticky piston, that has a block here that is holding that cart in place. This is the only way to reliably stop a cart where you want it when you're running a cart engine. Sometimes if they're really hauling tail, they'll go flying right past this. I want to use a hopper as well to load it, just basically because of the height of which this ends up being. You end up either really tall or it's either going to be really tall or really down in the ground if you do not do something like this. So again, this is all subject to how you feel like building it, but this is how I did it. The hopper is fast enough to deliver stuff into the minecart once they get broken from the block breaker, and it sends it sideways. So very simple, very easy. And again, like I said, that provides a positive stop for the minecart so it cannot travel forward. It's a very vanilla thing. You can do this easily with vanilla. So, all right. That's the basis of the system. That's how it works. Those are the 3 circuits that work, and I can actually probably go ahead and let this guy go one more time. He's kind of, go ahead. So he'll go around, it should unlock it, the clock should be running, and as soon as the clock gets over there and ticks it off, it lets it go, it runs over that detector rail, and the cycle stops. So that's that part. So I'll get over here and we'll get a top view of how things look here. It's pretty simple. There's a lot of redstone wire, no big deal there. The loading station looks about like this. Again, remember the repeaters are all on full delay, and that is set to subtract mode. Again, full delay here, and not gate. Pretty simple. So that's how that works. Now, there is another option, and I will give this option once somebody figures out what's wrong with it, is the bottling machine and the fluid unloader that Golrith so kindly gave us, which is the, I can't do that because I'm in this mode, hang on, fluid unloader, which is pretty simple, easy to build aside from it's a lot of sheet metal. What happens is, the other way to do this is we use a bottling machine, and a bottling machine can fill buckets. So where's my buckets? I thought I had some buckets. Let's just grab a few buckets. Let's get back in cheat mode. Buckets. Okay. Now, a bottling machine will fill buckets. So if I stuff a bucket in there, we can watch the bucket come across. It gets filled. It gets delivered into this chest, which then delivers into this hopper, into this minecart. This is a more easier machine to play with. However, again, now we're playing with a machine that does not back stuff once an inventory is full. So you're going to have to pay attention using redstone control. Repeaters are just a numbered amount of barrels. So when the buckets, just a numbered amount of buckets, so that when this is done, you'll either have a full minecart or you'll have an empty minecart, or however it is. This will fill the buckets, and the unloader is supposed to empty a bucket that I place in here, put an empty bucket in here, and then on the back slot I should end up with a fluid, like I have creeper acid right now. Let's just fix that real quick. I was playing around because this is we're having an issue. This is not functioning correctly, and I was going to kind of hope to get this out so that we could see it. But we'll put a fluid output hatch down, and you're not missing a structure. No. Let's just do this in case. So nothing is in here. Nothing is in here. We don't have anything over here. And if I send this little minecart over to here, what he should do, if I can get him to move, is he will come over on top of that hopper. That hopper will place a bucket in there, and then I end up with an empty bucket. Something's going on because I get the full buckets, but or the empty buckets, but I'm also getting a secondary bucket. What it's supposed to do is it's supposed to take a full bucket, empty it, put an empty bucket in this interface, and then output the fluids back here. So that's the other way to do that. So that basically what happens is once the minecart is done emptying, you can send him on his way, and he can come back over to one of these. Unloading, loading. All right, so just as for funsies, I do have a real world set up over here. So real world thingy in kind of in-world deal. It's a little bit more of a mess because I'm trying to compact this as much as possible, but it does function, and it does function with rails. So what we're doing is we're using rail station markers to mark a location for the cart to come to, and he's leaving, but the cart is going to come by this station marker and drop down into the holding area on both of these. It comes in, as again, we see there's a detector rail here that is starting the system to function. It drops all of its barrels off into this block placer. The redstone circuit is fairly similar. I do have a block here instead of a regular redstone, whatever, it doesn't really matter. And it does the same thing. So on this one, I'm controlling when this is on and when this is off. You don't have to do that. So let's go over here and watch him fill up. He's over here filling. How many you got in you now? 4. And that's basically all it does, is it goes around, comes back, and stops at the station, or tries to stop at a station, and goes right on past it, gets loaded up, and then goes over there. So pretty simple, pretty easy. I know it's a lot of redstone, but it does work. So, all right, guys. I think that's probably about all I wanted to talk about as far as this goes, so I hope this helps out. I hope this is a little bit more clear. I was not trying to run through it too terribly quickly, but yeah, that's what I'm going to be doing in my world, and if you guys have a better idea or a better solution, I'd sure love to see it. So, thanks for watching. See ya.